The NBA trade market is heating up. The February 6th trade deadline, it's getting closer. Today, I need to talk about Jimmy Butler, Jakob Poeltl, Cam Johnson, and a few of the other major pieces out there on the market. We've got all the latest. Make sure you subscribe right here to the channel. We're going to keep you up to date on everything going on here at the Basketball Bulletin. All right, let's get into it here. So ESPN, this is via Mark Stein's fantastic Substack, which I highly recommend. Mark Stein saying the ESPN reported the Heat hope to trade Jimmy Butler as soon as possible. And that is complete 180 from what the Heat said the day after Christmas, December 26th. They issued that statement saying we are not trading Jimmy Butler. Of course, there was some reason behind that, and I question the validity of that statement, and it does look like it very much was not a true statement. It was done more to placate Jimmy or to attempt to placate Jimmy Butler. But now it's pretty clear to everybody involved that he's done. He's done in Miami. They're going to trade him. However, there's been some reporting that's come out today suggesting that if he does not get traded before the 7-game suspension is up, that the Miami Heat will play Jimmy Butler. I'm going to get into the why of that in just a moment, but it's interesting to note that Jimmy, maybe because of some league rules, may have actually not played his last game with the Miami Heat, although I think he is going to be pretty checked out mentally. However, Stein noting that the Miami Heat are looking to take back the smallest amount of guaranteed money as possible beyond this season. Look, we've been talking about this a lot. This is the theme right now of this trade deadline. Teams don't want any long-term money. They are allergic to long-term money. They are running scared of the new collective bargaining agreement, and teams are dead set on future flexibility and not taking back contracts that go past this year. And that could actually put certain teams like the Golden State Warriors or perhaps the Clippers in a beneficial situation because of their expiring contracts that they have to offer. And we talk about a guy like PJ Tucker, like Bones Highland with the Clippers. You look at the Warriors, and you've got pieces like Kevon Looney, say, as well as a number of other guys that you could stack up with some expiring deals. Gary Payton II, they've got a bunch of them. So that puts them in a bit more of an advantageous situation. But right now, the Miami Heat don't want to take back any long-term money. However, Golden State reportedly, according to The Athletic, were backing away from a Jimmy Butler trade because they're not so sure that trading away Andrew Wiggins is the best move for them to make. I wonder how Steph Curry feels about that. Really, everybody, like, how do you think Steph Curry feels if you've got a chance to get Jimmy Butler and Andrew Wiggins is holding that up? But, I mean, is that something the Warriors should be? I mean, the clock is ticking with Steph Curry. It could be, maybe he loves Andrew Wiggins and he's totally fine with the team as is. But I would say right now, the Warriors don't have a shot to win a championship. And making a move is a necessity. So if they are balking on putting Andrew Wiggins into a deal to try to help Steph get a championship, perhaps trying to hold on to future assets, you have to wonder, what does Steph actually think about that strategy? I know there's a lot of Warriors fans that don't agree with what Golden State is doing right now. I believe this could just be posturing on the part of the I still think it makes way too much sense for him to land in Golden State. I think it's posturing on the part of the Warriors. They're just trying to get the best deal they can. And my guess, and that's all it is that ultimately Jimmy Butler winds up with the Warriors. It just makes too much sense for everybody involved. All right. Miami is going to be attempting to make this is another factor. Miami's not going to tank. So for people saying, well, let's just throw in future draft capital, throw in, young talent and stuff. Yeah, that'd be great to get, but Miami is not looking to tank. There's not going to be a fire sale here. If you're a team that's interested in trading for Bam Adebayo, it ain't happening. Same thing with Tyler Hero. It's not happening. Not happening. Miami is not tanking. They're not going to tear this thing apart just because they need to move on from Jimmy Butler. They will look to reload, retool, not rebuild. What's going on? Miami, they owe their first-round pick. Their 2026 pick becomes unprotected to OKC if Miami misses the playoffs this year. So they want to make the playoffs, send a non-lottery pick to OKC, and then be done with that. But beyond that, the Heat have more future picks involved. If the Heat don't make the playoffs this year, then their pick next year goes unprotected to OKC. They also owe a first in the Terry Rozier trade. So that could become due in 2027. But if they miss the playoffs this year, they would have to send a 2028 unprotected pick for the Terry Rozier deal. So from an organizational level, beyond just the Heat feeling like they could still make some noise in the East, there's been a little bit of talk about that. They really don't, draft pick wise, they don't want to miss the playoffs. They are not going to pull the plug on this team, regardless of whether or not Jimmy Butler is there. All right. As far as Jimmy Butler staying away from the team, the NBA has rules now to prevent teams from shutting down star players. So the NBA would have to decide. It's possible that the 7-game suspension comes and goes, and then Jimmy Butler meets with Miami, and the Heat just tell him, hey, you've got to play. You've got to play because the NBA wants you to play. Jimmy Butler fits the designation of a star player because he was named to the All-NBA second team in 2022-2023. Therefore, he falls under the rules that prevent teams from resting or sitting out star players. Now, the NBA allowed PJ Tucker to sit out. He has not played for the Clippers this season. The Clippers said stay home. But PJ Tucker is not considered a star in the eyes of the NBA or, frankly, anyone else for that matter. So the NBA would have to rule on whether or not Jimmy Butler could actually sit out if the 7-game suspension comes and goes and the Miami Heat still have not moved him. So that'll be something to keep an eye on and potentially could force Butler back onto the court in a very uncomfortable situation with Miami. Again, Butler is going to file a grievance through the NBA Players Association, try to get back some of that money. Meanwhile, the Chicago Bulls, they are expected at some point to try to move on from Nikola Vucevic, perhaps Lonzo Ball. Of course, they would love to move Zach LaVine, but that's going to be very difficult to do. But the Chicago Bulls continue to be in a very difficult spot because as of right now, and we're watching this is updating almost every day right now, the Chicago Bulls currently are would have the 10th pick in the NBA draft. Remember, if it is 11th, it goes to the Spurs. It is a top 10 protected pick. The Chicago Bulls, they are teetering, should the draft stay chalk, on handing their pick over to the San Antonio Spurs. So you know Spurs fans are keeping a real close eye on Chicago. They're right there on that edge. They need to jettison talent. They need to get players off this team and start really losing games to try to make sure they can keep their draft pick. It would be devastating for them to lose a pick in a draft that's this talented. Unfortunately, there have been some rumblings lately that Chicago may still try to go for it in the East. And by go for it, I mean hope to make the play, do the same BS they've been doing for years now. Attempt to make the play-in, get a little bit of extra revenue coming in because you get a play-in game or two in under your belt, and off you go. And then you bounce out early, and that's that. Currently, the Chicago Bulls barely hanging on by a thread to a play-in spot. Now, fortunately, the 76ers have no interest in losing. So the hope amongst Bulls fans is that the Bulls can lose enough games to drop back and Philly can jump up. But that's going to take probably making some moves. You need to get some of these veteran players off your roster, both because you need to lose games and because the value is evaporating by the day. Every day that Nikola Vucevic gets older, it's not helping his value. He's 34 years old. That also adds more possibility for his insane shooting numbers this year to regress. And that could lower his value. They need to strike while the iron is hot. And so there is a wide expectation that they will make these moves at some point. But the Chicago Bulls have done some dumb stuff over the last few years, not really tearing it down when they needed to. And so the fear for Bulls fans have to be that that's going to be their path again. They're not going to tear it down. They need to, though. And I would have to think that at some point cooler heads will prevail. Logic will rule the day, and the Bulls will move on from Nikola Vucevic, maybe Lonzo Ball if they can get something for him. I talked about it earlier this morning, but the Phoenix Suns are making a big change, removing Bradley Beal from their starting lineup. Same with Yusuf Nurkic, and replacing them with rookie Ryan Dunn and Mason Plumlee. Like, that's how bad the Suns are down right now. That a rookie, Ryan Dunn, is stepping in place of Bradley Beal because it ain't working in Phoenix. It's just not. Now, the Suns would like to make a move. They would like to trade Bradley Beal. I can't imagine any team in the NBA wanting him. Not that he's a bad player, because he's not, but he has a no-trade clause. So even if you're a team that wants him, let's throw out a random team. Let's say, I don't know, let's call it the Nets. Let's say for some dumb reason the Nets decide we want Bradley Beal. Then they don't, but let's say they did. Bradley Beal could waive his no-trade clause and get traded to the Nets. That could happen. The no-trade clause doesn't go away. Let's say it doesn't work and next year the Nets want to move on from Bradley Beal. He would still have a no trade clause. So not only is he not worth $50 million, but he's not worth $50 million plus the massive headache of a no trade clause. So I can't imagine there's any NBA team clamoring for them. But the Phoenix Suns, they want to turn Bradley Beal into Jimmy Butler. And they should. They should want to do that. Absolutely. They would love to turn Bradley Beal into Jimmy Butler. Problem is the Miami Heat don't want Bradley Beal. So now you got to get at least a third team involved, maybe a fourth team involved that wants Bradley Beal, that can send stuff to Miami that Miami wants. It gets very complicated very quickly. That said, the Suns have the most real interest right now in Jimmy Butler because they're desperate. So the Suns have the most interest in Jimmy Butler, but also maybe the most difficult path to get to Butler. So a complicated situation there, and we will see if benching Bradley Beal solves anything or does it make the problem in the desert even worse. Now, Cam Johnson, a new team has emerged with interest in Cam Johnson. Indiana, the Pacers, with interest in Cam Johnson. You look at the Indiana Pacers. Okay team this season. Minus 1.3 in point differential. 500 on the season. 18-18. Okay, they did just beat the aforementioned Phoenix Suns. This team is okay. Maybe not as exciting as we hoped they were going to be. Not as fun. Tyrese Halliburton been kind of up and down. This team's got some interesting pieces. Certainly not an Eastern Conference Finals team. Certainly not that. I think we know that was a bit of a fluke last year. But there is something here in Indiana. And so what they would like to do is land Cam Johnson. So add them into the mix. It feels like every team right now is interested in Cam Johnson because he really could fit anywhere. He could fit for any team. And he's got a very reasonable salary. Now, he did just sprain his ankle. He sprained his ankle, which could be a factor for the Warriors too, by the way, who lost Jonathan Kuminga to a bad ankle sprain. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he'll be okay. But it sounds like it's going to be at least 3 weeks without him. But Cam Johnson did just sprain his ankle. Not as bad as Jonathan Kuminga. So maybe that'll be something to watch. But add the Pacers into the growing list of teams that are interested in getting Cam Johnson. Would he be a good fit there? Of course. But he'd be a good fit anywhere. He would be a good fit. Any team, doesn't matter. Cam Johnson would be a fit. Memphis is another Cam Johnson suitor, as are the Sacramento Kings. The Kings, another team right up there in desperation level with those Phoenix Suns. Unlike the Suns, the Sacramento Kings have actually won their last 4 games, maybe quietly, but the Kings are suddenly winning games. We've been talking about this, that the Sacramento Kings, their net rating, their offensive rating, defensive rating, everything, it tells you there's some bad luck at play here. There is something off. There has been something off in Sacramento. They haven't been able to close close games, but also their record was not indicative of the real talent on this team. I've been saying it for a while. They're better than a non-play-in team. Are they a playoff team? Are they a great team? No. But they're not a 12th seed either. They're playing at a better level than that. They have had some bad luck, and it does seem like regression might finally be hitting them in a positive way. They've won their last 4. So maybe that eases some of the pressure to make a move from Sacramento, but remember, they've got De'Aaron Fox hanging over their head. He's got an extension that they can offer him this summer, and they want to make sure that he sticks around. And in order to do that, they're going to have to show him that they are committed to winning in Sacramento. So I do think the Sacramento Kings will continue to have a lot of motivation to trade for Cam Johnson, but maybe the 4-game winning streak takes away a little bit of the desperation that they've had, although the Suns' 4-game losing streak only ramps up their desperation to try to get something done in the West. But nonetheless, the Kings will remain as a suitor for Cam Johnson. You also have the Memphis Grizzlies, and the Grizz are a different situation, right? Where they want to jump out of this second tier in the Western Conference. They want to jump out of this grouping with the Rockets and jump up to the tier that OKC is in. OKC, the hottest team in the NBA. They've won 15 games in a row right now. They are running away with the West. Memphis wants to try to maybe not catch them. I mean, they're 7.5 games back right now. That's going to be pretty tough, but at least get themselves playing at that OKC level. And so they make a lot of sense as a landing spot for Cam Johnson. But I'll tell you what, I really like Memphis as a landing spot for Jimmy Butler. I really do. And I've talked about maybe do you give up Desmond Bane to get there? I would assume that would get it done with the Miami Heat. Whether or not they need another 2 guard, that talent-wise would be really nice for the Heat, but they could also package together guys like Marcus Smart, Luke Kennard, a few other contracts, and go get that done too if they're willing to surrender draft capital. And if Miami looks at Marcus Smart as maybe a veteran piece that can help them out with winning games this season, maybe there's something there. So Memphis, though, still among the teams that's very interested in Cam Johnson. But again, like I said, right now, you could list every team in the NBA as interested in Cam Johnson, but they're also a team to keep an eye on in the Jimmy Butler race. All right, everybody. A lot going on, obviously, on the NBA trade track. I do think the Jimmy Butler domino is probably the next big one to fall. Cam Johnson, I think the Nets are being very patient right now, trying to wait and let things develop, see if any teams get particularly desperate and maybe offer a little bit more than they should. They were certainly motivated sellers on Dorian Finney-Smith and Dennis Schroeder. Doesn't seem that that's going to be their strategy here with Cam Johnson. But Jimmy Butler, the Miami Heat, a move is coming at some point, just a matter of time. And we need to figure out who it is that's going to make that move. The Phoenix Suns would love for it to be them. Maybe the Golden State Warriors should make that move, but I also wouldn't take my eyes off of the Memphis Grizzlies. Last but certainly not least, the Toronto Raptors. There's interest in Jakob Poeltl. However, right now, the Raptors resisting trade interest in the big man. It's a really interesting big man market. You've got a few centers in that 20 million-ish range, like Jakob Poeltl, like Nikola Vucevic, guys like that are out there. Maybe Miles Turner gets added to the mix. We'll see. Depends on how things are going in Indiana right now. That seems to be unlikely, but you've got a few centers in that 20 million or so range. But then you have some guys like Robert Williams, Jonas Valanciunas in the 12-ish, $10 to $12 million range. And then you've got a guy like Nick Richards, who's a clear backup big, but at the 5 million range. And now you've got Jakob Poeltl in an interesting situation here with the Toronto Raptors, where right now they're resisting making a deal with him, but $19.5 million flat for 3 seasons, a player option on the 3rd year here. Pretty solid contract for a guy that's been really productive for this team this year. Now, he's in that kind of weird spot where at 29 years old, is he the type of guy a, say, rebuilding team would go after? Probably not. He's very, very talented, but probably not the age where a rebuilding team's going to go after him. But is he, and the same thing for the Toronto Raptors, is he to the point where he's too old to be part of their future when they are good? Because it may take a little while for the Raptors to rebuild this thing. 15 points, 10 boards, almost 11 boards on the season to go along with 1.3 blocks, shooting 60% from the field. I mean, he is having a career year for Toronto, but they're kind of caught in that spot of how soon do we think we're going to be good right now? How soon are we going to be good? And by the time we're good, is Jakob Poeltl now on the downward slide? Should we cash in or should we just hang on to him? But again, right now, the Raptors resisting trade interest in him. Meanwhile, Bruce Brown, who has returned to play, and Kelly Olynyk are regarded as the coveted veterans. Toronto is most open to trading before the trade deadline. Makes a lot of sense. We know they picked up the option year this year on Bruce Brown's deal, specifically to trade him. I actually think it's too much money. 23 million is actually kind of a difficult number to get to for a guy like Bruce Brown, but nonetheless, he will have interest on the market. Teams are always looking for two-way guard/wings. And then Kelly Olynyk as a big, 33 years old, but fairly versatile big man, $12 million. He put him in that Robert Williams, that Jonas Valanciunas tier of center, but does have the ability to space the floor, $13.5 million. I don't think the Raptors will be a motivated seller on Olynyk, but if the right move comes along, there it is. They'll probably move on from him. But Jakob Poeltl, a guy who's going to get a lot of interest. The question for the Raptors is now the time to move on from him? But everybody, I want to say I appreciate all of you so much. Donnie and I both do. We appreciate all of you who have been supporting this channel, our 100% independent NBA channel. You guys have been absolutely awesome. So again, big thanks to all of you out there. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure you do hit that subscribe button and go check out my video from this morning on Bradley Beal getting moved to the bench and a big mess in the desert. Till then, see ya and stay safe.